Welcome back to the show, everybody! Today, we're diving into some heavy stuff. We're talking about the top 5 most dangerous people in the world. This isn't about your everyday criminals. This is about individuals who've operated on a whole other level, man. These individuals have left a mark on history with their actions, and not in a good way. We're talking about dictators, terrorists, and criminals who've instilled fear and caused widespread suffering. So buckle up, because we're about to explore the darkest corners of human history. First up, we've got Osama Bin Laden, a name that resonates with fear and infamy across the globe. Born into a wealthy Saudi family, Bin Laden's journey from a privileged upbringing to becoming the face of global terrorism is both complex and chilling. Now, this guy needs no introduction. His actions have left an indelible mark on history, forever altering the course of global politics and security. The mere mention of his name can evoke a range of emotions, from anger to sorrow, from fear to a deep sense of loss. He was the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks, the founder of Al-Qaeda, and for years, the most wanted man on the planet. The attacks on September 11, 2001, were not just acts of terror. They were a declaration of war against the United States and its allies. The meticulous planning and execution of these attacks showcased a level of sophistication and ruthlessness that the world had rarely seen. Think about that for a second. The most wanted man on the planet. His face was plastered on wanted posters, news broadcasts, and intelligence briefings worldwide. Governments spent billions of dollars and countless resources in the hunt to bring him to justice. His ability to evade capture for so long only added to his notorious legend. What kind of evil do you have to inflict to earn that title? The devastation of 9/11 left nearly 3,000 people dead, and thousands more injured. Families were torn apart, and the psychological scars still linger today. The images of the Twin Towers collapsing, the Pentagon in flames, and Flight 93's crash site are seared into the collective memory of a generation. Bin Laden was a product of his time, shaped by the Soviet-Afghan War and driven by a radical interpretation of Islam. During the 1980s, he joined the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, fighting against the Soviet invasion. This period was crucial in his transformation, as he forged alliances with other militants and honed his ideological beliefs. The war not only provided him with military experience but also a network of like-minded extremists. He declared war on the West, and he meant it. His fatwas, or religious decrees, called for the killing of Americans and their allies, framing it as a divine duty. These declarations were not empty threats. They were followed by a series of attacks on U.S. embassies, military targets, and eventually, the catastrophic events of 9/11. This wasn't some small-time crook. This was a guy who understood the power of ideology, and used it to manipulate people into committing horrific acts. His propaganda videos and speeches were designed to inspire and recruit, turning ordinary individuals into instruments of terror. The reach of his influence extended far beyond the Middle East, affecting global security policies and leading to the War on Terror, which continues to shape international relations to this day. Next, we have Adolf Hitler. Man, where do you even begin with this guy? Adolf Hitler is a name that resonates with infamy and horror. Born in 1889 in Austria, he rose to power in Germany in the early 20th century, becoming the Chancellor in 1933, and later, the Führer. His ascent was marked by a combination of political savvy, ruthless ambition, and a terrifyingly effective use of propaganda. Hitler's reign of terror as the leader of Nazi Germany is a chilling example of what happens when unchecked ambition and hatred combine. His vision of a pure Aryan race led to the implementation of policies that systematically dehumanized and exterminated millions. The Nuremberg Laws, enacted in 1935, stripped Jews of their rights and laid the groundwork for the horrors to come. We're talking about the systematic extermination of millions of people during the Holocaust, a genocide meticulously planned and executed by the Nazi regime. 6 million Jews, along with millions of others including Romani people, disabled individuals, political dissidents, and more, were brutally murdered. The sheer scale and brutality of the Holocaust are almost incomprehensible. This genocide remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. The liberation of concentration camps by Allied forces revealed the extent of the atrocities committed. Emaciated survivors, mass graves, and the remnants of gas chambers stood as stark evidence of the evil that had been perpetrated. The world was forced to confront the depths of human cruelty. Hitler's ideology, rooted in racism, anti-Semitism, and a lust for power, led to the deaths of millions and plunged the world into a devastating war. World War II, which lasted from 1939 to 1945, saw unprecedented destruction and loss of life. Entire cities were reduced to rubble, and the global political landscape was forever altered. It's hard to fathom the level of evil that drove his actions. Hitler's ability to manipulate and control those around him, combined with his unyielding belief in his own twisted ideology, created a perfect storm of destruction. His inner circle, including figures like Heinrich Himmler and Joseph Goebbels, were instrumental in carrying out his horrific plans. It's crucial to remember these atrocities not just as historical events, but as stark reminders of the dangers of unchecked hate and the fragility of peace. The lessons of the Holocaust and World War II are as relevant today as they were over 70 years ago. We must remain vigilant against the forces of hatred and intolerance, ensuring that such horrors are never repeated. Chapter 3. Joseph Stalin, the Iron Fist of the Soviet Union. Now let's talk about Joseph Stalin. This guy was the definition of a dictator. He ruled the Soviet Union with an iron fist for decades, and his paranoia and thirst for power led to the deaths of millions of his own people. We're talking about the Great Purge, where he eliminated anyone he perceived as a threat, real or imagined. Then there were the gulags, these brutal forced labor camps where people were worked to death. Stalin's regime was built on fear, and he used propaganda and terror to maintain his grip on power. It's a chilling reminder that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Chapter 4. Pablo Escobar, the Cocaine Kingpin. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about Pablo Escobar. Born in 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia, Escobar grew up in a modest household. From a young age, he was ambitious and had a knack for business, albeit on the wrong side of the law. He started with petty crimes like selling contraband cigarettes and fake lottery tickets, but his ambitions quickly grew. This dude was a different kind of dangerous. By the late 1970s, he had established the Medellin cartel, which would become one of the most powerful and violent criminal organizations in history. Escobar's rise to power was marked by his ruthlessness and his ability to outmaneuver both his rivals and law enforcement. He was the head of the Medellin cartel, and he flooded the streets of America with cocaine in the 80s. At the height of his power, it's estimated that the cartel was smuggling 15 tons of cocaine per day into the United States. This influx of drugs had a devastating impact on American society, leading to a surge in addiction, crime, and violence. We're talking about a level of wealth and power that's hard to comprehend. Escobar's estimated net worth was around $30 billion, making him one of the richest men in the world at the time. He owned luxurious estates, private jets, and even a personal zoo. His wealth allowed him to bribe officials and build a network of loyal followers. But with that power came incredible violence. Escobar was known for his brutal tactics, including assassinations, bombings, and kidnappings. He used violence as a tool to intimidate his enemies and maintain control over his empire. His reign of terror left a lasting scar on Colombia. Escobar waged war against his rivals and the Colombian government. He was responsible for the deaths of thousands of people, including politicians, judges, and journalists. His campaign of terror was aimed at anyone who stood in his way, and he showed no mercy. He was responsible for countless deaths, bombings, and assassinations. One of the most infamous incidents was the bombing of Avianca Flight 203 in 1989, which killed 110 people. Escobar's willingness to target civilians showed the extent of his ruthlessness. He was a ruthless businessman who operated outside the law and left a trail of blood in his wake. His business acumen was matched only by his capacity for violence. He built an empire on the suffering of others, and his legacy is one of destruction and chaos. It's a dark side of the drug trade, man, and Escobar is a prime example of how destructive it can be. His story serves as a grim reminder of the human cost of the drug trade and the lengths to which some will go for power and wealth. Even after his death in 1993, the impact of his actions continues to be felt in Colombia and around the world. Chapter 5. Kim Jong-un, the Enigma of North Korea. Last but not least, we have Kim Jong-un. This guy is a bit of an enigma, shrouded in secrecy and propaganda. He inherited the dictatorship of North Korea from his father and has continued the country's isolationist policies. Under his rule, North Korea has developed nuclear weapons, posing a significant threat to global security. But it's the human rights abuses that are truly disturbing. We're talking about political prisons, forced labor, torture, and executions. Kim Jong-un's regime is a stark reminder that the world is still home to oppressive dictatorships, where basic human rights are violated daily. So there you have it, folks, the top 5 most dangerous people in the world. These individuals have shaped history in the most terrifying ways. Stay informed and stay safe. It's a crazy world out there, and it's important to be aware of the forces that shape it, both good and evil. We need to learn from these dark chapters in history and work towards a future where such individuals don't rise to power. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. Stay curious, my friends.